Hello, everyone. I'm very excited for the brand new book. I've got it now. It's Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. This is my favorite D&D setting, and this book really does it a great service. This is one of my favorite source books in D&D ever. This was an incredibly easy read. This book was so enticing and evocative. I read it basically cover to cover. It's just a really good book. It's a really good D&D book, and it's got so much in there that almost feels like its own tabletop game, independent of everything else. Right from the get-go, we talk about character creation. So this is very meant for players. This book has plenty of player options. And we've talked about the lineages beforehand, and they've been revamped, as you might say. But we've got the Dhampir, we've got the Hexblood, and the Reborn, and I'm going to revisit those in another video, but they're all fantastic. I love Dhampirs. They've been in D&D for a while. I really like this version of the Dhampir. The Hexblood is utterly bizarre and strange and creepy, and I still adore it. It's so dark, evil, fey, and it's fantastic. Though the Reborn are probably my favorite, just because I love that kind of Frankenstein-like storytelling, or the implications of having distant memories for other reasons through magical, mystical, arcane experiments. And so the construct kind of feel of the Reborn is something I enjoy. Now, they did leave out having Dhampirs, count as undead, and also Reborn being constructs or undead. I think there's just too many rulings that got complicated because of both being humanoid and undead, or humanoid and a construct. Complicated things a bit, and so they just kind of left that out. Though for flavor, personally, I would still have the Dhampir show up on a detect undead spell. Like, you sense that they are kind of undead light. Moving on from there are the dark gifts, and they are the best iteration of the dark gifts I've seen, and you get so much from them. You get these additional abilities that you can use, or maybe you get proficiencies. There's a lot here. There's 8 different dark gifts, and then you have a negative. And sometimes that negative is something that will happen completely randomly, that will intrude on your psyche maybe, or affect you physically. But what I do like about it is this is them giving the player a tool, something they can choose from the moment of their creation, or they can possibly get one of these dark gifts later on through making some kind of deal with, either a domain lord or the dark powers themselves. What I like is that's buy-in by the player. The player has said, I am willing to have this type of maybe psychological horror. Maybe I'm willing to be haunted or physically affected. And here is you making this choice to have this dark gift and getting this negative. And that's the player making that choice early on. And it really sinks its roots into kind of what Ravenloft is all about, and also player agency. I love these dark gifts. There's a lot going on in them, and I'm definitely going to be adopting them for characters in the future. And I think you could easily use these for any D&D game, frankly. So they are not necessarily Ravenloft specific. We do have subclass options. The Undead Warlock, the Warlock, the Undead. I love it. They did solve the issue where you don't get an extra damage die for every time you attack. It's a very tanky Warlock. It is my favorite Warlock for sure. We also have the Bard College of Spirits subclass appearing in there, and I'm going to discuss both of these subclasses in another video and what they've done and how they've altered them slightly. But they're fantastic options for any player. I do like them very, very, very much. And again, the Warlock, the Undead, that's just chef's kiss, wonderful. On top of this, they have backgrounds, and they've got some kind of different background choices that you can have, that you can adjust existing backgrounds. They've also got the Investigator, which has some really great options, and they also have kind of the Haunted one again as well for this. They're both great options for backgrounds. I like that they're giving you the option to layer other options onto existing backgrounds that maybe make more sense for Ravenloft. So that was nice and encouraging to see. They also have a wonderful list of terrible horror trinkets that your character might have. Again, this is really good stuff for cementing your existence in the world of Ravenloft and having something just a bit odd on your person that kind of represents that. I would use all these tools so far in any campaign setting. It is a book. When you read it, you're constantly inspired, not only by like, oh, wow, that's a really cool idea that they came up with for D&D or for Ravenloft. There are ideas that make me like stop reading the book for a moment. And then I start thinking of an adventure I would write because of something they said. And that's the best kind of book. You know, a book that really encourages you to be inspired. And there's a lot of that in this. There's a lot of tools. We do delve in chapter 2 into creating your own domain, which speaks very much about the intent of this book because they do list a lot of domains. They describe a lot of existing domains in Ravenloft, but the first thing that they want to do is they want to teach you how to create your own Darklord. They've got tables for doing so if you want to do so randomly. They've got tables for randomly generating a domain. And then talking about the different genres of horror. And we'll go over the list of genres of horror again. And it's very obvious that this book is not just about Gothic horror. It is about all unsettling horror genres that you might enjoy. So they do talk about body horror. They've got cosmic horror in here in a big way. They've got dark fantasy. They've got folk horror. They've got, ghost stories, Gothic horror, and a bunch of other genres as well. And they push it, I think, further than Ravenloft has really actually been pushed before in these different genres. Each of these domains feels like their own campaign setting in many ways, especially the ones that they really go in depth to. But they give you the building blocks to make your own domain, make it easy, or make it so it's completely randomly generated. You can pick up this book as someone who is curious about dungeon mastering. And the idea of just randomly generating a domain and a Darklord is so fun. And you've got some options here for players where if you have a couple people who are just kind of curious about D&D right now, they can just pick up these pre-generated characters. They're called survivors and jump into the game at a moment's notice. And I love that. I mean, you could buy this book and I would say in 30 minutes be like running someone on a game, or 15 minutes even, with some of the options and consideration that they've taken in this book. Again, for advanced players and for players who are just curious about D&D. So going on from there, obviously we talk about the established domains of Dread, Bootspur, Borka. We've got obviously Barovia. We have more information on Barovia in this as well. Lamordia is probably my favorite of all time. They have these lengthy descriptions of all these domains. They talk about the different NPCs, the different cultures, the Dark Lords themselves, and why these domains exist, why these domains are effectively kind of a prison for these Dark Lords. And they go in depth into how the mists function themselves. What happens when you go into the mists? And they've got, again, randomly generated tables for a lot of interesting things. You're not ever going to want for mystery and a little bit of randomness if you want it in this book. And it's really great. I love the detail that they go into. I also do love Falkovnia now. That's in my top 3 for sure. I really love Falkovnia as it works now because zombies are such a fundamental part of the very origins of Ravenloft. The Strahd zombie being one of them. I'm going to do an entire video about many of these domains individually, as well as my feelings about zombies, which I have very strong opinions on apparently, and a lot of these monsters as well. We do get these very lengthy descriptions, but then they have additional descriptions of other domains that are not pages and pages and pages. Some of them are just a few paragraphs, and some of them are definite references to previous domains. There's one domain is actually a domain of all the domains that have existed in Ravenloft before that maybe don't exist or don't have a domain lord anymore, that are falling apart. Is very much this apocalypse kind of cosmic horror, but just the end of all things, like the end of all these domains kind of circling each other And there's definitely a lovely reference to some older D&D adventures, as well as Sithicus, Lord Soth's old domain. A bit of a wink and a nod. And there's a lot of other Easter eggs in this book that had me laughing out loud. So very astute D&D aficionados are going to be amused by some of this stuff. But these little tiny domain descriptions are fantastic because anyone, if you're just interested in running Ravenloft, can read like a couple of paragraphs and you're like, okay, I get this idea. And what I like is the uniqueness of some of this stuff that kind of shows you how genre bending everything can be. One of these domains is flat out from Eberron, and it's a train. The train is the domain. You know, there was this horrible accident during the calamity. They made one of these trains wait for a VIP, and everyone was killed. And so this became part of Ravenloft. And this train is the domain. There's not a set location where it exists. And it's that kind of stuff that really frees your mind in understanding what Ravenloft can be about. Another example of this that is fully described, it is quite lengthy, the Carnival. And this is another domain that actually can go to other domains. The Carnival itself is a domain that can enter into Barovia or anywhere else. And the people who go with it can enter all these domains. Now, Dark Lords can't decide to become part of the Carnival and enter someone else's domain, but it does show you like a lot of these rules can get broken. These domains have different abilities that affect magic, affect, you know, your ability to use remove curse, which is like a catch-all for everything, or revivify may not work the way your players think it's going to work in some of these places. I like a lot of these shorter domains. They've got really fantastic ideas, some great references to Ravenloft past. You've got the Sea of Sorrows. There is one domain that I really, really like that it's just kind of my thing is the Writer's Bridge. This is a bridge that is in itself a mini domain that can exist in any domain anywhere. And it has effectively a Dullahan, which is the Irish myth that is essentially Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And there is always a writer, and it can exist anywhere and take a variety of forms. But this domain can travel to any other domain. And I love it. I love all these individual ideas. And so any dungeon master can like read a couple of these paragraphs and be like, let's run it right here. You know, I don't need to know everything about it. But I get it. It's a seed of an idea, and it takes root in your brain and makes you think and imagine adventure. And yeah, I like these. Sorry if I'm going on and on about it, but I really love the long form, and then I love all this short form as well. That's less intimidating, I think, for a lot of players and dungeon masters. Now, going on from there, you know, we go into the Vistani, Keepers of the Feather, and a bunch of other groups that exist in Ravenloft. We talk about, you know, the monster hunters and some of the key players, the movers and shakers that exist in the world of Ravenloft, and the kind of the history of all of them. We've got that as well. We've got some really fantastic discussion about preparing for horror, talking to your players about it, but still being scary. There's a really good horror toolkit in here that talks about things like curses. How does a curse start? And it's so open-ended in the way that like a player could probably curse somebody. So like it talks about here's a variety of ways that a curse could begin. And this is the middle part of that curse. You know, this difficult part where you are, maybe you're haunted, maybe you're afflicted, whatever this curse is doing to you. And also, you know, remove curse ain't going to do it necessarily. It depends on the strength of the curse, and then also about the resolution of that curse. And so, yeah, they really do kind of flesh this out, and it's really well done. We've got a wonderful discussion about fear and stress. I am glad that this is no longer like insanity or madness anymore. I think it's very effective, this concept of fear and stress, in reminding a player like, this is a lethal world. This is horror. This is Ravenloft. You are going to be scared. when something terrible happens. You're not forcing them to be, but when they do witness something absolutely terrible, it can have a negative effect on their character in a very mechanical way. And I think it's very smartly done. We've also got haunted traps, which I love. There are traps that exist that are not mechanical, physically, but are because maybe something bad happened there. Maybe a very evil creature died. Maybe something's trapped in some kind of statue. But they go into some detail about various haunted traps that you might deal with in Ravenloft as well. Everyone who wrote on this is clearly a massive fan of horror and thinks about it a lot. It is a love note to the genre. We've got survivors, which is fantastic for people who are curious about D&D. These are basically little stat blocks. They're a lot like sidekicks. And if you want to run a game for some people that are just kind of curious about D&D, but they don't want to build a full-fledged character, they can grab one of these survivors. Boom, you're in an adventure. You're running around. You're trying to survive. I think it's very smartly done. On top of all of this, you got the House of Lament. It's a really fun adventure in a creepy way. Very much a haunted house. Very classic. And I highly recommend it. So it wouldn't be Ravenloft if we didn't have a ton of monsters. And I love these monsters in Ravenloft. Some of these are my favorite going way back, vampiric mind flayers. We've got the Lugaroo, which I have deep feelings about. I will be making multiple videos with my wife, Megan, about several of these monsters and how they're kind of game changers in some way. They've got the Dullahan, as I mentioned, kind of the headless horseman. They've got some, more swarms and some more zombies and rules about zombies that I quite like, and I will be going way in depth on that stuff, as well as another star spawn, which is fantastic as well. So it is a very lush bestiary of terrible, bad monsters. And also, they give you all the tools to make new monsters yourselves and how to describe these monsters in a way that is terrifying. Just fantastic tools. Like, how do you describe a monster? No matter, instead of just saying, oh, you face a troll, this is what you face. And you describe it. And you don't need to say the word of the monster. You don't need to say you're facing a Lugaroo. Why would you do that? It's that uncertainty that makes it fun. And they give you a lot of advice on how to take an existing monster and make it more creepy. Because Ravenloft is about the unknown. That's what makes it scary. Magic may not work the way you thought it will. Monsters may not work the way that you thought they will. And that is what keeps it interesting and fun for players, in my opinion. This, again, is one of my favorite source books of all time for D&D. I love Ravenloft. I think this is absolutely a 256-page love note to Ravenloft itself. It is such an easy read. It was so fun to go over, and I find myself rereading it already. So I highly recommend this for new players, players who've been doing this for a long time. It's a great setting. It's a great source book. And it's got a lot of really good tools for the imagination. And again, these domains that they include are so varied, and our horror that exists in so many different cultures in our real world as well. It's just very eclectic and diverse and inviting in a horrific way. So I'm just thrilled. Thank you for listening to this video. We are going to have a whole lot of videos over the next couple of days, maybe in a couple of weeks, because I just love Ravenloft and I cannot wait to run a Ravenloft campaign. And this book is perfect for you if you want to do that. So if you want to check out those videos, this is going to be in a playlist. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There's also a bell I hear tell that you can click on that and be notified every time that we make a video. We will be having a lot of videos about a lot of things in this book, in this playlist. So I highly recommend this book. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for a lot of Megan and Todd talking about D&D and Ravenloft. And I hope you enjoyed this book as much as I did. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to support this channel, again, like, subscribe, and also we have an Amazon affiliate link as well in the description. If you click on that, purchase the book, we'll see some of those funds and we can make more videos like this. Yep, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for watching.